It's an ungodly hour, 5:30 a.m., and the lingering tendrils of night, thick and inky, still cling to the world outside my window. My body, a weathered and ancient archive of countless expeditions, remembers without fail. Dawn, that sliver of cool, pristine air before the sun's merciless ascent, was always the most productive, most revealing time to unearth secrets buried for millennia. Even when my mind, heavy with the weight of 69 years, craves the sweet oblivion of sleep, my bones, each one a fragile, protesting relic of their own long, storied history, demand I rise. Every movement is a meticulously planned campaign, a strategic maneuver against the encroaching stiffness. Right leg first, always. That's the silent pact I've made with my aging frame for minimal pain in these unforgiving mornings. I lean heavily on the bedside table, its cold, smooth surface a stark contrast to my aching joints, pulling my left leg up. A slow, deliberate inhale, exhale. I'm standing, swaying slightly, like a reed in a desert wind, a precarious monument to sheer willpower, but I'm upright. A tiny victory, a whisper of triumph in the quiet dawn, the first of many I'll claim today. My trusty cane, a faithful companion that has borne witness to my struggles since 1978 when arthritis first began its insidious siege, waits patiently by the wall. Its polished wood, darkened by years of my touch, feels like an extension of my own palm. I bought it in a bustling market in Cairo, a souvenir that became a necessity. Now, it's not merely an accessory, it's an indispensable extension of me, a third leg against the world's uneven terrain. The bathroom is a mere 4 steps away, a journey that once would have been dismissed as trivial, but now each one is a conscious, arduous effort, a stark and painful contrast to the miles of shifting sand dunes I once traversed without thought. The mirror, a cruel but undeniably honest lens, reflects back Elizabeth Betty Miller, 69 years young, though some days it feels like 1,000. My silver hair, a wild tangle of wisps hastily gathered into a loose, defiant bun, frames a face etched with a lifetime of wrinkles, each line a chapter, a living map of countless journeys and untold stories. But my eyes, those piercing, unwavering blue eyes, are utterly unchanged, clear, sharp, unyielding, having witnessed wonders most only dream of, sights now confined to dusty museum displays. I don't waste precious time with elaborate preparations. A simple cotton dress, its fabric worn soft with age, sensible flats, devoid of frivolous heels, minimal makeup, just enough to soften the edges of time. The harsh realities of field life taught me efficiency, only the barest essentials. Nothing superfluous. Down the stairs I go, my hands gripping the polished banister with fierce determination, counting each of the 15 steps, a silent mantra against the growing ache. The kettle is already singing its familiar, comforting morning song by the time I reach the kitchen, its cheerful whistle a stark contrast to the quiet house. My home in Gladstone isn't just a house, it's a living museum of my life, each room a gallery of memories. Expedition photos, faded but vibrant, adorn the living room walls, a younger me, grimy but radiant, amidst the grandeur of the Valley of the Kings, me, small but resolute, nestled among the crumbling ruins of ancient Babylon, me, a wide-brimmed hat shielding my face from the scorching sun, shovel in hand, standing at the very edge of a newly opened excavation in Mesopotamia. Shelves overflow with tangible echoes from across the globe, a clay tablet inscribed with the precise, intricate marks of cuneiform, protected under a glass dome, a replica, of course. The priceless original resides in the British Museum, safe from greedy hands. Stone beads, polished smooth by time, pulled from the cold embrace of an ancient burial site. A pottery fragment, its subtle patterns speaking of lives long past, 3,000 years old, a testament to human ingenuity. The hot, steaming tea, black and strong, sends a welcome warmth spreading through my old bones as I settle into my favorite armchair by the window, watching the street slowly awaken under the first blush of dawn. Old Mr. Henderson, a creature of habit, walks his sleepy spaniel, its tail wagging a slow, rhythmic beat. Mrs. Thompson, her bathrobe cinched tight, retrieves her morning paper, a rustle of pages in the quiet. An ordinary morning in an ordinary American suburb. None of them suspect that among them lives a woman who has held artifacts crafted long before Christ walked the earth, a woman who has walked on ground where empires rose and fell. The mailman's familiar, rhythmic clatter at precisely 9 a.m. signals my slow, deliberate pilgrimage to the front door. Among the usual deluge of brightly colored flyers and mundane bills, a single, cream-colored envelope bearing the prestigious Oxford University logo catches my eye. My heart, a stubborn old thing, does a strange, youthful somersault, a giddy flutter, as if I were 18, bursting with ambition, not 69, burdened by the years. Inside, a letter from my former student, Professor Marcus Reed, his elegant script familiar and comforting. Dear Dr. Miller, it begins, a respectful salutation, though he's known me for 40 years, witnessing my triumphs and my stumbles. A recent expedition in Syria unearthed ceramic fragments strikingly similar to those you meticulously described in your seminal 1983 article. Your expert opinion, Dr. Miller, would be not merely helpful, but invaluable. Photographs are attached for your perusal. I retrieve my strongest magnifying glass, its heavy brass frame cool against my fingers, and meticulously examine the images. My eyesight isn't what it used to be, a regrettable concession to time, but I can still discern the delicate, almost imperceptible cross-hatching on the ancient clay, a signature of craftsmanship. It truly does resemble the artifacts I so painstakingly unearthed in the sun-baked Euphrates Valley decades ago. If confirmed, this discovery, this whisper from the past, could revolutionize our understanding of ancient tribal migration routes, rewriting chapters of human history. The telephone rings, its sudden, shrill jangle tearing through the quiet contemplation, making me flinch involuntarily. Years spent in the volatile, unpredictable field taught me to associate unexpected sounds with potential, immediate danger, the rumble of an impending cave-in, the chilling rattle of a venomous snake hidden in the dust, the heavy footsteps of armed looters. Mom? Are you home? It's Robert, my only son, his voice grating, laced with that particular tone he invariably reserves for me, a blend of thinly veiled impatience and barely concealed condescension, as if speaking to a particularly dim-witted child. No, I'm scaling Mount Everest, darling, I reply dryly, my voice a brittle crackle of sarcasm. Of course I'm home. Where else would I be, given my current physical limitations? He ignores my irony, as always. I'll swing by in an hour. We need to discuss Charlotte's invitation for the barbecue this Saturday. It's important. Robert never visits, he swings by, a quick, efficient transaction, as if I'm merely a fleeting stop on his perpetually packed itinerary, not a cherished destination. I've grown accustomed to it, this casual dismissal. Since David passed 5 years ago, leaving a gaping void, I've become something of a chore for my son, another mundane item to tick off his endless list between pressing work commitments and his sacred golf games. I manage to brew fresh, strong tea and even bake a batch of simple, unadorned oatmeal cookies before his arrival, the comforting scent filling the quiet kitchen. Robert doesn't appreciate my baking. His wife, Carol, a stickler for health fads, keeps him on a strict, joyless diet. But I bake anyway. It reminds me, bittersweetly, of the times when my little boy, his face smudged with flour, would wait impatiently, eagerly, for me to pull the warm tray from the oven. That eager little boy is long gone, vanished, replaced by a 49-year-old man with a rapidly receding hairline, a burgeoning paunch, and perpetually furrowed brows that speak of constant stress and mild irritation. Robert enters without the courtesy of a knock, as usual, his presence jarring in the quiet, antique-filled space. Tall, impeccably dressed in a crisp business suit, he looks utterly foreign in my home, a sanctuary filled with the echoes of ancient worlds and countless cherished memories. Mom. He pecks my cheek, a fleeting, almost clinical brush of lips, without leaning in, forcing my stiff body to rise on tiptoes, which sends a fresh wave of aches through my protesting knees. You look well. It's his standard opening, a meaningless pleasantry, delivered without a genuine glance, his eyes already systematically scanning the room, his perpetual, silent audit searching for any sign of my perceived failure or decline, an unwashed teacup, a speck of dust on a forgotten shelf, anything that would confirm his deeply held, unspoken belief that I'm not coping well alone. Tea? I offer, my voice carefully neutral, already pouring, the steaming liquid a silent invitation. Only if it's sugar-free, he replies, though he knows, intimately, that I always serve his tea without sugar, a small, passive-aggressive jab at my supposed lack of foresight. We settle in the living room, a space usually reserved for quiet contemplation. Robert perches stiffly on the very edge of the couch, like a bird ready to bolt, poised for immediate escape, and me in my favorite, worn armchair, its sturdy, comforting armrests aiding my rising, a small but significant luxury. So, the barbecue, Robert begins, sipping his tea with an air of detached urgency. Saturday, 3 p.m. Charlotte really wants you to come. She specifically mentioned it. We both know that's a carefully constructed lie. Charlotte, my granddaughter, a fleeting acquaintance, barely remembers I exist, lost in her own busy, modern life. But these are the unwritten rules of our game. Pretend we're a normal, loving family, a picture-perfect facade. I received an exceptionally interesting letter today, I say, my voice deliberately casual, gesturing vaguely to the Oxford envelope resting on the side table. Professor Marcus Reed, a brilliant mind, is seeking my advice on a significant new find. Robert casts a fleeting, dismissive glance at the letter, his eyes already drifting. That student of yours? He asks without a flicker of genuine interest. What's he unearthed this time? Another old bone? More ancient dirt? Ceramic fragments, I answer, my voice tight with suppressed irritation, fighting to keep my composure. They might confirm my theory about ancient trade routes, a hypothesis I've worked on for decades. Mom, Robert interrupts, checking his expensive watch, a subtle signal of his dwindling patience. Can you be at the barbecue? Liam will be there too. He hasn't seen you in a while, and he actually asked about you. Liam, my grandson, the single flickering ember of warmth in my family, the only member who occasionally calls just for the sheer pleasure of it, not out of obligation or necessity. Certainly, I'll be there, I agree, a forced placidity in my voice. Do I need to bring anything? A dish, perhaps? No, you don't need anything, Robert replies quickly, too quickly. Last time I brought a homemade apple pie to a family gathering, a labor of love, Carol pointedly, ostentatiously set it aside, citing unknown ingredients and implying I'd somehow poisoned it. I'll pick you up at 2:30, Robert adds, already standing, his impatience barely contained. You don't need anything? This, too, is a ritualistic question, part of the unspoken script. The correct, expected answer is no, thank you, I have everything I could possibly need. Any other answer will irritate Robert, a fact he'll try to conceal with a tight smile, but I'll see it anyway, etched in the subtle tension of his jaw. Actually, I decide, a spark of defiance igniting within me, I need to pop into the pharmacy for new hearing aid batteries. These ones are almost dead. Robert wrinkles his nose, a visible grimace, as if I've asked him to escort me to the moon. Mom, I have a critical board meeting today. How about tomorrow, or could you just order delivery? It's 2025, after all. Of course. I smile sweetly, a false, knowing smile. I was only joking. I have spares tucked away. Don't worry your busy head. It's a complete lie, but it saves us both an awkward, pointless confrontation. Robert nods in palpable relief, pecks my cheek again, a fleeting, almost non-existent touch, and leaves, promising to call tomorrow. We both know he won't. The door clicks shut, a soft, final sound, and the house fills with a heavy, echoing silence once more, a vacuum where conversation used to be. I turn back to Marcus's letter, its crisp paper a tangible connection to my true calling. This is where real life is, I think, a deep, resonant certainty settling within me. There's more genuine warmth and shared humanity in these ancient clay fragments, these whispers from forgotten civilizations, than in a forced visit from my own son. I settle at my old Underwood typewriter, its sturdy frame a familiar friend. I own a sleek, modern computer, of course, but my fingers, gnarled and twisted by decades of arthritis, find a strange solace, a comforting rhythm, in the precise, satisfying clack of the mechanical keys. I begin typing my reply to Marcus, meticulously outlining my thoughts on the new find, my theories, my insights. The rhythmic clack-clack-clack of the keys fills the room, a familiar, comforting sound that transports me back to dusty field reports written by the flickering, smoky light of a kerosene lamp under a vast, star-pricked desert sky. Memories surge, unbidden and vivid. David, his brow furrowed in concentration, bent over an excavation site, his tanned, strong hands gently, expertly brushing sand from what would later be identified as a rare bronze dagger, its surface green with age. Our first expedition together. Syria, 1967. I was a young, eager graduate student. He, an already renowned archaeologist, his reputation preceding him. When we discovered the royal tomb at Tel Halafa, a moment etched forever in my mind, it was I who first noticed the unique, intricate ornamentation on the walls, a subtle detail overlooked by others, ultimately changing the dating of the entire complex, rewriting a significant chapter of history. David never once downplayed my contributions, never stole my thunder. He always, scrupulously, listed me as co-author in all publications, even when it raised envious eyebrows among his male colleagues. "Betty sees what others miss," he'd say at conferences, a note of deep pride, a genuine admiration in his voice. In our home, a bustling hub of intellectual curiosity, there was never a rigid distinction between men's work and women's work. When Robert was born, a tiny, squalling bundle of joy, we took turns, seamlessly, bringing him to lectures, his small snores a rhythmic counterpoint to the scholarly discourse, while the other excavated under the merciless sun. As he grew, he occasionally joined us on expeditions. I remember 8-year-old Robert, his face smeared with dust, holding a shard of ancient pottery, his eyes alight with a fierce, burning curiosity. "Mom, I'm going to be an archaeologist too," he'd promised, his small voice full of earnest conviction. But something shifted, something fundamental, in adolescence. Robert grew inexplicably, perhaps shamefully, embarrassed by our unconventional lives, our long, unpredictable absences, our house, a chaotic haven, filled with stacks of dusty books and strange, intriguing artifacts instead of fashionable, pristine furniture. He chose the most normal profession he could find, accounting, a world of rigid numbers and predictable outcomes. He married Carol, a woman as grounded and pragmatic as he was, and together they began to view David and me as eccentric, slightly embarrassing old people wasting our lives on useless excavations, chasing ghosts in the sand. David died of a heart attack, right there in the field, at the age of 70, doing precisely what he loved most, his final breath mingling with the ancient dust. His last words, whispered almost inaudibly, "Betty, look. Something shiny over there." I never saw what, precisely, he noticed in the sand before he slipped away. After he passed, Robert insisted I move closer to him and Carol, to their controlled, predictable world. "You need supervision, Mom," he'd said, his voice laced with patronizing concern, as if I were a child or a beloved, but helpless pet. I agreed to move to Gladstone, a concession, but insisted on my own house, small but unequivocally mine, a fortress of independence. I finished the letter to Marcus, its arguments meticulously crafted, reread it one last time, and carefully seal the envelope. "I'll walk it to the post office tomorrow. It'll be a good excuse for a walk, a necessary movement for my protesting limbs. My legs aren't what they used to be, each step a testament to endurance, but the doctor, a young man with earnest eyes, insists movement is essential, a vital spark against the encroaching stillness." I spend the evening sifting through old photo albums, their covers worn smooth with handling, each page a portal to another time. Here's Robert, a younger, softer version of himself, holding his newborn daughter, Charlotte, her tiny hand clutching his finger. Here's Liam, tall and awkward, at his high school graduation, a faint smile gracing his lips. And here are David and I at a dig in Egypt, both tanned almost black by the merciless sun, our gray hair wind-tossed, our faces alight with a shared, boundless joy. Happy. Sleep, a fickle mistress, eludes me. I lie in the dark, listening to the clock's steady, insistent rhythm, its ticking a constant reminder of dwindling time, thinking of the upcoming barbecue. Part of me, the tired, aching part, wants to feign illness, to cite poor health, to retreat. But the other part, the unyielding, indomitable part, the part that spent half a lifetime battling the elements in the sands and dust, overcoming scorching heat, bitter cold, and crushing physical exhaustion, reminds me with a fierce whisper that Elizabeth Miller isn't one to retreat from a challenge, isn't one to back down in the face of difficulty, even if that difficulty is her own flesh and blood. Saturday arrives far too quickly, a stark, unwelcome intrusion. I wake with a profound, almost crushing heaviness in my chest that defies explanation by mere arthritis or advanced age. A premonition, that's what it was, a chilling whisper from my subconscious. In my 69 years, I'd learned to trust my intuition implicitly. It was that same unwavering inner voice that led me, against all odds and the skepticism of others, to the hidden, obscured entrance of the tomb at Deir el-Bahari, when all other explorers had passed it by, blind to its secrets. Today, that intuition is screaming, stay home. Do not go. But I, stubborn to a fault, do not listen. I choose a light blue cotton dress, its fabric soft and breathable, dressy enough for a family event, yet still comfortable, a small nod to practicality. I struggle with the jewelry, my fingers, thick and gnarled, no longer nimble enough for delicate clasps. I finally settle on the silver brooch David gave me for our 30th wedding anniversary, a small, intricately carved silver scarab with subtle turquoise inlays, a replica of a genuine artifact we found together, a symbol of our shared life. Robert picks me up at 2:30 p.m. sharp, his punctuality almost unsettling. Such precision is a curious legacy of his upbringing, David always said, with a wry smile. In archaeology, as in life, tardiness can cost you a discovery, a priceless find. Except his son applied that precise principle to the sterile world of accounting, not the thrilling chaos of excavation. "Ready, Mom?" he asks, barely stepping over the threshold, his eyes, quick and assessing, already scanning me with an appraising, almost critical gaze. "Are you wearing that? It's going to be stiflingly hot." "I spent 2 decades in the desert, Robert," I say dryly, my voice a brittle thread of patience. "I think I can manage the heat in the manicured suburbs of Gladstone." He shrugs, a gesture I've learned to interpret as no use arguing with an obstinate old woman, and picks up my bag, small but surprisingly heavy because of a carefully chosen gift for my great-granddaughter. I found an antique music box, its delicate wooden surface scuffed but charming, and painstakingly restored it, then filled it with tiny, shimmering treasures, colored pebbles I collected from around the world, each one a miniature fossil of a memory. Each with a story that 4-year-old Lily, engrossed in her cartoon world, is unlikely to appreciate now, but perhaps someday, just perhaps. The drive to Charlotte's house takes a brisk 20 minutes, the silence in the car punctuated only by the hum of the engine. Robert drives with a rigid focus, occasionally responding to my attempts at conversation with monosyllabic grunts, his attention clearly elsewhere. I tell him about Marcus's letter, about the profound significance of the new find, the thrilling possibilities it opens. He nods, that peculiar, maddening detachment speaking louder than any words. He isn't interested, not truly. Charlotte and her husband, Mark's, house is a quintessential manifestation of the American dream, as interpreted by the younger generation, a sprawling 2-story structure, an impeccably manicured lawn as green as velvet, a vibrant playground in the backyard, a cavernous 2-car garage, a sprawling patio with a gleaming barbecue, and a pool, not grand, but sufficiently large to impress the neighbors. As we pull up, the party is in full, boisterous swing. Parked cars jam the driveway and spill onto the street, a chaotic testament to their popularity. Robert helps me from the car, his touch more out of a sense of obligation than genuine concern. His hand under my elbow is tense, rigid, as if he fears I might collapse into a heap at any moment. "Try not to bore everyone with your digging stories, Mom," he warns, his voice low but sharp as we approach the house. "Mark's office friends will be here, regular people unlike us." The unspoken words hang in the air, thick with condescension, a familiar, stinging humiliation. In his voice is the same profound embarrassment I saw on his face as a teenager when he'd begged me, red-faced, not to wear my weird ethnic things to school assemblies. Charlotte meets us at the door with a strained smile and an air kiss that doesn't quite make contact with my cheek. "Grandma, you made it," she exclaims with feigned, almost theatrical enthusiasm. "How wonderful. Everyone's already in the yard. Come on in, don't mind the noise." As I follow her through the house, my eyes, ever observant, scan the impeccably decorated rooms. I notice, with a familiar pang, that none of my pictures, none of the artifacts I'd gifted them over the years, are visible. Mark's parents' family photos, bland and generic, take pride of place on the mantelpiece, a subtle but clear statement of allegiance. The backyard is a treacherous maze for a woman with a cane, an uneven lawn, dotted with discarded children's toys, wicker chairs spaced too closely together, forming an obstacle course. Every step requires intense concentration, a battle against my own faltering balance. I walk slowly, deliberately forward, leaning heavily on my cane, feeling its sturdy tip sink into the soft earth, each subtle dip a minor peril. No one offers a helping hand, no one even seems to notice my predicament, lost in their own conversations. Carol sits in a tight circle of women, her voice a low murmur, discussing the exorbitant membership fees of a new fitness club. She nods at me, a brief, dismissive gesture, without interrupting her animated conversation. Liam, my grandson, a solitary figure, is busy fine-tuning the music, his brow furrowed in concentration. He spots me, his face lighting up with a genuine smile, and waves, but doesn't approach, too engrossed in his task. Mark bustles around the grill, a king among his subjects, surrounded by a boisterous group of men, bottles of beer clutched in their hands. I make my way to the nearest available chair, an inviting patch of empty space, and carefully lower myself onto it, trying not to wrinkle my aching knees, a silent prayer escaping my lips. Lily, my great-granddaughter, a whirlwind of joyful energy, is playing with other children in the far corner of the yard. I wave at her, a small, hopeful gesture, but she's too engrossed in her game to notice. "Here you go." Robert hands me a glass of lemonade, its surface beaded with condensation. "Just don't spill it, Mom. You know how clumsy you can be." It's said with a thinly veiled edge, as if I'm a clumsy child, not a woman who has held fragile artifacts thousands of years old with steady, reverent hands. I accept the glass with a smile that, hopefully, doesn't betray my bitterness, a sharp taste at the back of my tongue. The time drags slowly, each minute an eternity. The conversations around me touch on topics utterly alien to my world: office gossip, the latest car models, political debates that seem to be conducted in a language utterly foreign to English, a dialect of superficiality. I sit, observing everyone like an anthropologist studying an unknown tribe, meticulously trying to decipher their strange customs and enigmatic rituals, feeling utterly disconnected. Finally, mercifully, Liam sits down next to me, holding a plate of food, a small offering. "Grandma, how are you? It's been far too long." His eyes, David's eyes, attentive, intelligent, filled with rare, genuine curiosity, look at me with a warmth that melts some of the chill in my heart. Of the whole family, only Liam inherited that precious trait, the ability to truly see the person he's talking to look beyond the facade. "I received a rather important letter from Oxford," I say, glad for the opportunity to share a piece of my true life. "Do you remember Professor Reed? He's seeking my advice on a significant new find." "Really?" Liam looks genuinely impressed, his eyes widening. "What's the find?" I begin to tell him about the ceramic fragments, about the thrilling possibility of revising ancient trade routes, about the profound significance of this discovery for understanding the intricate migrations of ancient peoples. Liam listens intently, asking intelligent questions that show his deep understanding, his mind a receptive sponge. As a child, he was the only one who asked me to bring him not trinkets or souvenirs, but dusty history books from my exotic trips, his thirst for knowledge insatiable. "Still burdening people with your old bones, Mom?" Robert's voice, sharp and dismissive, interrupts our conversation, a jarring intrusion. He stands over us, holding a bottle of beer, that familiar, condescending smile plastered on his face, a smile he reserves for moments when he wants to subtly, deliberately, put me in my place. "I was merely telling Liam about the inquiry from Cambridge," I reply calmly, my voice a steel thread of restraint. "Bones, shards, dusty books." Robert shakes his head, turning to Liam, his expression one of exaggerated exasperation. "She was always obsessed with that stuff. When I was a kid, my friends thought my parents were grave robbers, not, well, you know." Technically, Liam interjected, a small, wry smile on his lips, "archaeologists." Yeah, I know," Robert says, waving a dismissive hand. "But seriously, Mom, no one here wants to hear about artifacts that are 1,000 years old. Why don't you tell me how you like the new security system I installed at your house? It was quite expensive, you know." "It's working fine, Robert," I lie smoothly, a small victory. "In fact, I turned it off the very first day. The constant audible alerts, the intrusive digital voice, were driving me absolutely crazy." Robert nods, a self-satisfied expression on his face, and walks away, his mission accomplished. Liam apologizes, a genuine softness in his voice, and leaves, saying he has to help Mark with the grill. I'm alone again, utterly alone amidst the cacophony of laughter and meaningless chatter. The heat is becoming unbearable, a suffocating blanket. My hearing aid begins to emit a piercing, high-pitched whistle, a shrill, unmistakable sign of a critically low battery. I discreetly try to turn up the volume, but it doesn't help. Now, the conversations around me sound distorted, as if they're coming from underwater, a garbled, indistinct murmur. I decide, with a sudden surge of determination, to walk over to Lily and give her the gift, to find a small moment of genuine connection. As I rise from my chair, a wave of dizziness washes over me, a potent combination of the oppressive heat, profound fatigue, and probably the various medications I'd taken that morning, each designed to alleviate one pain, but introducing another. Leaning heavily on my cane, I move slowly, painstakingly, across the sprawling courtyard, each step a deliberate act of will. The pool, a shimmering blue rectangle, is enclosed by a low, purely decorative fence. I'm walking around it, my focus on navigating the uneven terrain, when I hear Robert's voice, sharp and loud. "Hey, Mom. You want to go for a swim? Looks inviting." I turn, my attention momentarily diverted, and that's when I feel a sudden, forceful nudge in my back. Strong, firm, unmistakably deliberate, not a casual touch. My cane, my faithful companion, slips from my hand, clattering to the flagstones. The world turns upside down, a sickening lurch of vertigo. The water hits me like a concrete wall, a brutal, shocking impact, cold, unforgiving, instantly inducing panic. I submerge completely, my clothes, heavy and sodden, instantly becoming a leaden shroud, pulling me down. The hearing aid lets out a final, piercing squeak, a lament, then goes silent, plunging me into a muffled, distorted world. The chlorinated water stings my eyes, fills my nose and mouth, a burning sensation. I try desperately to push myself up, to breach the surface, but my arthritic arms and legs, stiff and uncooperative, won't budge, heavy as stone. The soaked, heavy dress wraps around my legs like a suffocating shroud, binding me. By some inexplicable miracle, a last surge of desperate adrenaline, I float to the surface, gasping, choking for air, each breath a painful rasp. Through the haze of chlorine-stung eyes, I see faces turned toward me, a sea of laughing faces. Robert stands at the edge of the pool, my forgotten cane clutched in his hand, a wide, triumphant grin plastered across his face. "Cool off, Mom," he shouts, his voice carrying clearly over the laughter, a cruel echo. And everyone around him, emboldened by his callousness, bursts into renewed, uproarious laughter, their amusement a deafening roar. I try to grasp the edge, my fingers, stiff and trembling, slipping uselessly on the wet tile. Every frantic movement sends excruciating pain through my protesting joints. The icy cold water makes my arthritic knees and hips ache worse, a deep, bone-gnawing throb. I can't get out on my own. Help! I whisper, my voice a thin, reedy plea, but no one hears, or perhaps no one wants to hear. The laughter continues, swelling around me. Someone, a shadowy figure, is filming what's happening on their cell phone, capturing my humiliation. I hear snippets of commentary, disjointed and cruel, like a mermaid. An old sea witch taking a dip. Somebody throw her a life preserver. The humiliation, a searing, burning shame, stings worse than the chlorine in my eyes. I, Elizabeth Miller, whose name is etched into the pages of archaeology textbooks, whose discoveries have fundamentally changed the understanding of ancient civilizations, am flailing in a pool like a helpless, pathetic circus monkey for public amusement. Suddenly, a blur of motion, and Liam is there. Without a word, without hesitation, he jumps into the pool, fully clothed, his shoes splashing. He pulls me under his strong arms, his grip firm and reassuring. "Hold on to me, Grandma," he says quietly, his voice a low, steady anchor, so only I can hear. "I'll pull you out. Just breathe." With his help, a lifeline in the icy water, I finally, gratefully, emerge from the water, my lungs burning, my body trembling. Liam hands me over to Mark who, to his credit, seems momentarily shocked into decency and helps me onto the nearest lounge chair. The laughter dies down abruptly, replaced by an awkward silence, a few embarrassed coughs and fake expressions of concern, a flimsy cloak over their previous amusement. "Gosh, Mom, it was a joke." Robert comes over, a towel clutched in his hand, his voice laced with feigned exasperation. "You were always so dramatic." I don't respond, I can't. Water drips in rivulets from my silver hair, from my nose, from my chin, a continuous, embarrassing stream. The dress, heavy and clinging, outlines my aging thinness, the fragile contours of a body I usually carefully conceal beneath loose clothing. The scarab brooch, a cherished memento, is gone, washed away by the water, lost somewhere in the chlorinated depths, as is my dignity. Charlotte fusses nearby, her movements jerky, her concern utterly false. "Grandma, you need to change. I have some things that will fit you, a spare swimsuit, perhaps." "I want to go home," I say, my voice sounding foreign even to myself, a harsh, unexpected croak. "But we haven't had dessert yet." Charlotte objects, her tone childishly petulant. "And Lily wanted to show you her new bike. She'll be so disappointed." "I want to go home," I say, harder now, a steely resolve in my voice. Silence. I can feel everyone's eyes on me, an old woman, wet and shivering, demanding to be removed from their pristine family party, a disruptive, inconvenient presence. I can see the judgment in their eyes, the unspoken accusation, as if I had ruined the fun rather than being the victim of a cruel, thoughtless joke. "I'll drive you, Grandma," Liam offers, still soaking wet, a loyal, protective presence by my side. "Don't be silly, Liam," Robert intervenes, his voice sharp with irritation. "You're the owner of a computer game company for children. I'll take her. It's my responsibility." He speaks of me in the third person, as if I'm not present, as if I'm an inanimate object to be moved from one place to another, a broken doll needing repair. Liam helps me up, his strong arm supporting me. My cane, which someone had retrieved, is wet and slippery in my trembling hand. I lean heavily on my grandson, feeling my legs shaking uncontrollably. The pain in my joints has become almost unbearable, a searing fire. The hearing aid is silent, utterly useless, probably ruined by the water, cutting me off from their muffled, mocking voices. "Here's your bag, Grandma." Liam hands me my bag, also soaked, its contents likely ruined. The carefully chosen gift for Lily, the antique music box, a symbol of my love, is probably destroyed. I nod, grateful for his genuine concern, but too exhausted, too emotionally depleted, to put it into words. We move slowly toward the exit, a procession of shame. I hear Carol's hushed voice, tinged with amusement, to someone near her. She's always been like that. Likes to make a scene, doesn't she? And chuckles in response, a conspiratorial sound. Robert walks ahead, his back rigid, radiating irritation with every tense curve. He doesn't offer me his hand, doesn't ask how I'm feeling, doesn't even glance back. He simply walks toward the car, as if performing an unpleasant, obligatory duty. As we pass the children's corner, Lily, a flash of bright color, runs up to me. "Grandma Betty, why are you wet?" Her innocent question, sharp and clear, makes me stop, my heart aching. I look into her trusting eyes, David's eyes, like Liam's, and try to smile, a weak, trembling effort. "I fell in the pool, honey. It's no big deal." "How's the mermaid?" she asks, with childlike directness and boundless curiosity. "Yes, like a very old mermaid," Robert answers for me, his voice oozing with fake chuckle, a sarcastic undertone. "Grandma needs to go home to dry off, sweetie." Liam gives his father a sharp, disapproving look, but says nothing, a silent rebuke. We continue on our slow, painful way to the car. Every step sends fresh waves of pain through my frozen joints. My wet clothes cling to my skin, making me shiver uncontrollably despite the warm air. Robert opens the passenger seat door. "Wait," Liam says, quickly. "I'll get a dry towel to put on the seat." "Don't make a fuss, Liam," Robert says impatiently. "The car will survive. It's just water." I get into the car, feeling the cold water from my clothes soaking instantly into the expensive leather seat. Another small humiliation, a subtle, unwelcome reminder in the chain of today's wretched events. Liam leans into the open window, his face earnest. "I'll call you tomorrow, Grandma," he promises, his voice a balm. "I'll check on you. Make sure you're okay." I nod, grateful for his genuine concern, but too exhausted, too emotionally depleted, to put it into words. Robert gets behind the wheel and starts the car, the engine roaring to life. We pull away under the lingering gazes of the guests gathered in the driveway, their curiosity mingled with indifference. I don't look back. I don't want to see their faces, curious, indifferent, or worse, pitiful. We drive in oppressive silence. I'm shivering more and more, my wet clothes sapping my warmth even in the warm car. "Turn on the heat, please," I ask, my voice a barely audible whisper, thick with cold. In July, Robert looks at me as if I'm utterly insane, his eyes wide with incredulity. "Are you actually cold, Mom?" "I'm soaked to the skin and freezing," I say, trying to keep my voice steady, to prevent it from cracking. He sighs, a sound of profound annoyance, but surprisingly, turns on the heat. "Look, Mom," he begins after a long, uncomfortable pause, his tone shifting to one of aggrieved reasonableness. "It was just a joke. Everyone was laughing. If you had just laughed with everyone else instead of making such a drama out of it, none of this would have happened." I stay silent, staring out the window at the houses floating by, their neat, identical facades mirroring the conformity of the people living in them. "Everyone had a great time," Robert continues, relentlessly, his voice rising in volume. "Charlotte worked so hard to organize the party, and you ruined it with your overreaction." I turn to him, my gaze unwavering, feeling the anger, hot and sharp, building inside me despite the lingering chill. "You pushed me into the pool, Robert. Your 69-year-old mother, with severe arthritis and a broken hearing aid." "It was a light push," he objects, his voice defensive, "and it was a shallow pool." "You always exaggerate things, Mom." "Always have. I could have hit my head on the edge. I could have drowned. My hearing aid is utterly ruined." "See? You're dramatizing." "It's no big deal, Mom, really. And I'll buy you a new hearing aid, all right?" He says it in the tone of a man offering immense, undeserved generosity, as if he weren't the direct cause of the breakage, as if it were a benevolent gesture on his part. The rest of the drive passes in stony silence, broken only by the hum of the heater. When we pull up to my house, Robert doesn't turn off the engine, a clear, unspoken sign that he isn't coming in, not even for a minute. "Can you handle it?" he asks formally, his eyes fixed straight ahead. "As always," I answer, my voice flat, opening the door. I get out of the car, still shivering in my wet clothes, my dignity in tatters. Robert doesn't even wait for me to get to the door. He pulls away the moment I close the car door, his tires spitting gravel. Standing on the doorstep of my house, the familiar sanctuary, I feel utterly shipwrecked, wet, shivering, tossed onto the cold, unforgiving shore of a life that went on without me, indifferent to my suffering. And for the first time in a long, long time, a chilling question forms in my mind. Do I even need to come back to this life? To a family where I was disrespected, unappreciated, and utterly unloved? I spent the first 3 days after the pool incident in bed, a miserable, aching heap. The cold, a relentless, insidious enemy, attacked me with a ferocity that only someone in their 60s can truly comprehend. A raging high fever, violent chills that shook my fragile frame, a raw, sore throat, and a cough that seemed to tear my old lungs apart with each spasm. But the profound physical discomfort, agonizing as it was nothing compared to the deep, aching heartache, a wound that burrowed deep into my soul. In the merciless bathroom mirror, I examined my body, a canvas of angry bruises, dark purple, almost black, on my thighs, yellowish green, fading on my arms. My skin at my age is as thin and delicate as ancient papyrus, and just as easily damaged. The hip I hit on the side of the pool is swollen and throbs with every slightest movement, a constant, dull ache. Arthritis, aggravated brutally by the cold water, had turned my joints into pockets of constant, searing, throbbing pain, each movement a fresh agony. My hearing aid, as I had suspected, is hopelessly, irrevocably ruined, a useless piece of plastic. The world around me became muffled, distorted, as if I'm living under a thick, suffocating glass hood, the sounds distant and indistinct. I can hear only the loudest noises, the insistent ringing of the telephone, the jarring knock on the door, but normal human speech, conversations, became a jumbled, meaningless mess, a frustrating garble. I caught myself thinking with a strange, bitter twist of irony that perhaps it was for the best. At least I wouldn't have to hear Robert's sneering, derisive comments or Carol's saccharine, condescending tone. On the 4th day, a stubborn spark reignited within me, and I forced myself to get up and get dressed, each movement a conscious act of will, resonating with a fresh wave of pain. But I couldn't afford the luxury of inaction, of succumbing to the weakness. 69 years of living, of surviving, had taught me one undeniable truth. If you surrender to illness or old age, even a single day longer than necessary, they can steal weeks, months, even years from your precious life. I had worked in the field with broken bones, with the debilitating fever of malaria, with sunburns covering every inch of exposed skin, turning it raw and blistered. I wasn't going to let a few bruises and a lingering cold beat me, not now, not ever. I made strong, hot tea with honey and lemon, a soothing, familiar recipe my mother still used, its aroma comforting, and sat down at the old wooden desk. The answer to Marcus's letter still lay there, unfinished, a testament to interrupted ambition. I reread it, cringing inwardly at a few obvious typos. My fingers, still twisted by arthritis and shaking with weakness, struggled clumsily with the typewriter keys. The phone rang when I'm halfway down the page, its sound jarringly loud enough that I can hear it even without a hearing aid. A welcome intrusion. Liam's name, a beacon of hope, popped up on the display. Grandma, his voice is muffled, indistinct, but I can still make out the words, a thread of concern woven into them. How are you feeling? I've been worried. I've been better, darling, I answered honestly, a rare moment of vulnerability, but I'll survive. I always do. I wanted to stop by, he says, his voice tinged with regret, but I've been absolutely swamped with work lately. I'm so sorry. His apology sounds sincere, genuinely heartfelt, and I felt a pang of guilt that I'd unwittingly, unfairly, compared him to Robert, who hadn't called once since that dreadful day. It's okay, honey, I'm fine. Your dad said. He said you refused to take his calls. I grinned, a wry, humorless twist of my lips. Of course Robert had spun it that way, portraying me as a resentful, bitter old woman ignoring his noble attempts at reconciliation. In reality, he hadn't called at all. It's hard to answer calls that didn't happen, Liam, I said, a dry wit in my voice, and anyway, my hearing aid is broken. I can barely even hear you right now. Oh, Grandma, I forgot about that. Dad says he'll buy you a new one. He's going to take care of it. He says a lot of things, Liam. He always has. There's an awkward, elongated pause, filled with unspoken truths. I knew Liam is in a difficult, unenviable position, caught squarely between his demanding father and his stubborn grandmother. He always tries valiantly to remain neutral in our endless conflicts, which, given Robert's volatile character, is a wise, self-preserving decision. Do you have a bad cold? Liam changed the subject, a graceful pivot. It's nothing serious, darling, just a cold. At my age, any minor infection feels like the end of the world, a harbinger of doom, but I've been through far worse, believe me. I'm so sorry about that, Grandma. Truly. It was a cruel joke. Absolutely cruel. His words, the very first admission from anyone in my family that what had happened wasn't harmless fun, but a deliberate act of malice, made my eyes instantly fill with hot tears. I quickly blinked them away furiously, even though Liam can't see me. Thank you, darling. It means a lot to me. More than you know. We talked some more, about his burgeoning career, about his girlfriend Rachel, her artistic ambitions, about his plans for a summer trip. When we finished talking, I felt a little lighter, a small crack in the wall of my isolation. At least one family member, finally, saw me as a person, a human being worthy of respect, not merely a burden. By the end of the week, I had almost entirely recovered from my cold, though my arthritis, a constant, nagging companion, was still bothering me more than usual, a painful legacy of the cold water. I decided it was time, irrevocably, to get a new hearing aid. My audiologist, Dr. Chin, a kind, patient woman, couldn't see me for 3 days, but I was grateful even for that. It turned out that my old hearing aid was beyond repair, utterly ruined by the chlorinated water, and a new, state-of-the-art one would cost a staggering $2,000. Insurance, a frustrating bureaucracy, only covered a small, insufficient portion of the amount. We can offer you a convenient installment plan, Dr. Miller, the assistant said kindly as she placed the order, her voice a gentle murmur. Dr. Miller, that address, that simple title, always warmed my heart, a potent reminder of a time when my expertise, my knowledge, was valued, when I wasn't just old mom or frail grandma, but a respected scientist, a voice of authority. I wrote a check for the down payment, the numbers a sting, and arranged a date for my next visit to have the new machine precisely adjusted to my specific needs. On the cab ride home, the city lights blurring outside the window, I pondered, deeply, what I should do about Robert. Part of me, the part that craved peace and quiet, wanted to simply let the situation go, to pretend that nothing truly significant had happened, all for the sake of maintaining the fragile appearance of a family relationship, a superficial peace. But the other part, the fierce, unyielding part, the same part that kept me digging, pushing through the suffocating heat and endless dust, when everyone else was ready to give up, to pack it in, demanded a confrontation, a clear, unequivocal conversation. The solution came, not as a sudden, blinding insight, but as a quiet, insistent ringing doorbell on Sunday morning. I was just finishing my solitary breakfast, savoring the quiet, when I heard a muffled sound, barely audible without my hearing aid. Leaning on my cane, each step a wince-inducing effort, I slowly, painfully, made my way to the door, my hip screaming in protest. Robert was standing on the doorstep, a polite, practiced smile on his face. He was holding a paper bag, which he held out to me as soon as I opened the door, a peace offering. "Hi, Mom. I brought you some Parker buns, the cinnamon ones you like." I remembered. It was his way of apologizing, not with words, which he found so difficult, but with gestures, ambiguous tokens that could be interpreted any way he wanted, leaving him an escape route. I accepted the package, its warmth seeping into my cold hands, and stepped back, allowing him to enter, ceding a small piece of my sanctuary. You look better, he remarked, walking into the living room, his eyes scanning as always. Liam said you were quite sick. A cold, I answered briefly, my voice clipped. It's what happens when you get soaked to the bone in a swimming pool, Robert. Robert wrinkled his nose, a visible grimace, but pointedly ignored the innuendo, the unspoken accusation hanging in the air. I've called you several times, Mom. I was worried. My hearing aid is broken, Robert. I can't hear calls unless I'm literally near the phone, holding it to my ear. Oh, yes. He had the nerve to look genuinely surprised, his brow furrowed in feigned concern. I completely forgot about that. I need to buy you a new one. I should have done that already. Already ordered one, Robert, I said, my voice firm. I'll have it in about a week. It's handled. How much is it? He asked, a hint of grudging obligation in his voice. I'll pay for it, of course. I looked at my son carefully, studying his face. He avoided my gaze, his eyes darting around the room, meticulously studying the expedition pictures on the wall, as if he were seeing them for the very first time, a diversion. $2,000, I answered, watching his reaction. Robert whistled, a low, drawn-out sound. Wow, that's not cheap, Mom. Are there maybe easier, less expensive options? This is the easier option, Robert, I said, my voice laced with a cold weariness. A truly good hearing aid, one that actually works, costs $5,000 and up. Okay, he finally looked at me, a flicker of irritation in his eyes. I'll write you a check. It's the least I can do. No need, Robert, I said, a wave of pride hardening my resolve. I've already made the first payment and arranged for a convenient installment plan. I'm handling it. Mom, don't be silly, he persisted, a patronizing tone creeping into his voice. Let me pay. After all, he stammered, searching for the right, diplomatic word. Your fault, I finished for him, my voice devoid of emotion, a cold, hard statement of fact. Robert sighed, a long-suffering, exaggerated sound, accompanied by that particular expression I knew all too well, a mixture of profound irritation and condescending disbelief. Here we go again. How much drama can we get over a stupid joke, Mom? A stupid joke? I could feel the anger, a simmering, volcanic heat, rising rapidly inside me, threatening to consume my composure. You pushed me into the pool, Robert. Your 69-year-old mother, frail and arthritic. It was a gentle push, Mom, honestly. And everyone laughed. If you just laughed with everyone else instead of making such a scene. I couldn't believe my ears, the audacity of his denial. I almost drowned, Robert. Do you understand? Drowned. Don't exaggerate, Mom. Please. Charlotte's pool is only 4 feet deep. It's absolutely impossible to drown in there. For a healthy person, yes, Robert. For an old woman with severe arthritis who can't get out on her own, no. Robert shook his head, his lips pressed into a thin, disapproving line, as if he were talking to a particularly unintelligent, stubborn child. You're always dramatizing everything, Mom. Always making a huge deal out of every little thing. Remember how you got hysterical when I accidentally broke that clay thing from Egypt when I was a kid? It was just a little clay pot. That clay thing was dated to the 2nd millennium BCE. Robert, I countered, my voice dangerously calm. It was historically priceless. An irreplaceable artifact. See? It's always the same with you. Anything that has to do with your dusty bones and useless shards is always more important than living people. More important than your own son. I closed my eyes, feeling the old, familiar pain, a deep, festering wound, rising from the depths of memory. Robert had always accused David and me of loving archaeology, our careers, more than him, that we dragged him around on dusty expeditions instead of providing him with a normal life, that we embarrassed him in front of his normal friends with our weird talk about ancient civilizations and forgotten empires. We always put you first, Robert, I said quietly, my voice raw with the effort of control, even when it meant abandoning important expeditions, promising projects, sacrificing our dreams. Really? His voice was dripping with cynical sarcasm, thick and cloying. What about my 13th birthday, Mom? When you and your father went to Turkey to dig up some old bones instead of being with me. Or my high school graduation, which you were 2 hours late for because your father insisted you make a detour to some crappy, obscure museum. I wanted to object, to scream, to remind him that for his 13th birthday we'd organized an extravagant trip to Disneyland for him and his friends, a trip he still talked about. To remind him that we'd been late for his graduation because of a catastrophic flight delay, not some insignificant museum. But I knew it was futile. Over the years, Robert had meticulously constructed his own distorted, self-serving version of our family history, a narrative where he was the perpetual victim, and David and I were the heartless, career-obsessed parents who consistently favored our work over our only son. Okay, Robert said, seeing that I wasn't engaging, wasn't taking the bait. Let's not bring up the past again. It's over. I came here to apologize, Mom. For the pool. For everything. It was the closest thing to a real, genuine apology I could ever expect from him, a rare concession. Apology accepted, I replied formally, my voice still devoid of warmth. Good, he smiled, a flicker of obvious relief crossing his face. Then the matter is settled. Carol is inviting you to dinner next Sunday. Nothing fancy, just a family dinner. We'd really like you to come. The thought of sitting at a sterile table with Carol, her eyes perpetually assessing me, judging my every move, made me shudder inwardly, a cold tremor. But I nodded. Okay, I'll be there. Great. I'll pick you up at 6 o'clock. Robert left shortly afterward, leaving me alone with a paper bag of Parker scones, which I'd never particularly liked, and the overwhelming, bitter feeling that a conversation that should have cleared things up, healed old wounds, had only made them worse, widening the chasm between us. Dinner at Robert and Carol's was exactly what I expected, perhaps even worse, strained, awkward, and profoundly uncomfortable. Carol, with her pretensions of culinary mastery, made fried chicken that was as dry and flavorless as sawdust, but I politely complimented her culinary talents, a white lie in the name of civility. Robert talked, incessantly, about work, about the new, obscenely expensive car he planned to buy, about petty problems with the contractor who was repairing their roof, ordinary, mundane, utterly superficial topics that required neither deep thought nor genuine emotional involvement, a carefully constructed shield against intimacy. At one point, the conversation, like a stray bullet, grazed the topic of my health. How's your hearing, Betty? Carol asked, her voice laced with a sickly sweet, faint sympathy, as she carefully arranged her salad. Robert tells me you ordered a new hearing aid. Yes, I'll get it next week, I replied, my voice flat. It must be so frustrating not being able to hear properly, she said, her head tilted, a perfect imitation of concern. I'm coping, Carol, I replied, allowing a hint of steel into my voice. Fortunately, I spend most of my time alone, so I don't suffer from it too much. Speaking of alone time, Robert interjected, seizing the opportunity. Carol and I were thinking, maybe you should seriously consider a nursing home, Mom. I nearly choked on a piece of chicken, the sudden shock lodging it in my throat. A nursing home. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Not now, of course, Robert added hastily, seeing the flicker in my eyes, but in the long run, Mom. You're not getting any younger, and since the unfortunate pool incident, Carol and I have been deeply worried about your safety, about you being alone. Amazing concern, I said dryly, my voice dripping with sarcasm, looking him straight in the eye, especially from the man who pushed me into that pool in the first place. See? Robert turned to Carol, a triumphant, exasperated gesture. She still can't let it go, Carol. The drama never ends. Betty, Carol leaned across the table toward me, her voice soft, manipulative. A lot of people your age live in nursing homes. You'll be cared for by professionals there. You'll be safe. You'll have company. And you won't have to worry about me, I added, looking her straight in the eye, my gaze unwavering, a silent challenge. What a convenient solution for all of you, isn't it? You're not being fair, Betty. Carol straightened, offended by my bluntness, her carefully constructed facade cracking slightly. We have your welfare in mind. Your best interests. My welfare is well provided for in my own home. Thank you very much, I said, my voice firm, dismissive. But what if you fall, Mom, or get sick again? Robert insisted, relentless. Who will help you then? Who will know? I have an emergency call system that you yourself installed, Robert, I countered, and the neighbors check on me every day. Mrs. Henderson brings me cookies. That's not the same as professional care, Betty, Carol objected, her voice rising in irritation. I don't need professional care yet, I cut her off, my voice sharp, definitive. I am completely capable of managing on my own right now. Thank you for your concern. Yes, Robert agreed, a grudging concession, but that could change very quickly, Mom. And when it does, we want to be ready. We want to have a plan in place. I set my fork aside, my appetite suddenly, utterly vanished, leaving behind a bitter emptiness. I appreciate your concern, I said, trying to keep my voice calm, steady, but it is up to me to decide where and how I am going to live. As long as I am sane and able to take care of myself, I will stay in my house. My home. Is that clear? Carol and Robert exchanged glances, that special, silent, knowing exchange between spouses that implicitly excludes everyone else, that speaks volumes without a single word. I could see the condescension in their eyes, the smug certainty that they were right, that my arguments were merely the ramblings of an old woman. They had already decided my fate for me, merely waiting for the opportune moment to make it a reality. Of course, Mom, Robert said at last, a thin, patronizing smile on his lips. It's your decision, of course. We just wanted you to know what we thought. Our expert opinion. The rest of the dinner passed in an awkward, strained silence, punctuated only by desultory small talk about the weather and the latest, insignificant news reports. When Robert drove me home, the dark road rushing by, I felt a huge, liberating sense of relief, a heavy burden lifting from my shoulders. As I crossed the familiar threshold of my house, the scent of old books and dried herbs comforting me, and settled into my favorite armchair with a cup of hot tea, its warmth a physical comfort, I thought about the stark, almost cruel contrast between the attitudes toward my age in my own family and in academia. To Robert and Carol, I was an infirm, inconvenient old woman in desperate need of supervision and quite possibly imminent placement in a nursing home, a burden to be managed. To Marcus Reed and his esteemed colleagues, however, I was a valuable, irreplaceable source of knowledge and experience, a living repository of wisdom whose opinion, whose insights, could fundamentally change the understanding of an entire era, a critical piece of the puzzle. The letter from Marcus, a tangible link to my true life, lay on the table next to my chair. I reread it, savoring the respectful, almost deferential tone, the repeated reference to Dr. Miller, the explicit acknowledgement of my merit and expertise, a validation. This, I thought, this is how the elderly should be treated, not as a burden, a drain on resources, but as a treasure trove of wisdom and knowledge, a living library of experience. I remembered a particularly vibrant conference in Cairo 5 years ago, just a few months before David's passing. Young, eager archaeologists, bright-eyed and ambitious, lined up to talk to me, to ask questions, to seek my advice, to glean insights from my long career. Professors from leading universities, brilliant minds, quoted my work extensively in their keynote speeches, their voices filled with admiration. The curator of the Cairo Museum, a distinguished scholar, personally took David and me on a private, exclusive tour of the ancient vaults, showing us artifacts not available to ordinary visitors, secrets hidden from public view. And now my own son, my flesh and blood, thinks I'm incapable of living on my own, a helpless creature. The bitter, searing irony of the situation didn't escape me, it burrowed deep. Those who knew me only by my works and reputation, by my intellectual contributions, valued me more, significantly more, than those who should have loved me simply for what I was, their mother, their grandmother. For the very first time, I allowed myself to admit the painful, unvarnished truth, a truth I had long suppressed. I would never, ever, get the respect I deserved from Robert, not as a scientist, not as a mother. To him, I will always be the one who chose career over family, who supposedly embarrassed him in front of his friends with my weird life, who didn't live like normal people. And no amount of groundbreaking advances, No amount of earth-shattering discoveries that have fundamentally changed the understanding of human history will ever change that deeply ingrained perception. This realization, raw and painful as it was also strangely, profoundly liberating. I no longer had to try, futilely, to earn his approval or his respect. I could just be me, authentically me, Elizabeth Miller, archaeologist and explorer, a woman who had seen more history with my own eyes, touched more ancient artifacts than most people read in books. I picked up a fresh sheet of paper, its crispness a promise, and began writing a reply to Marcus, my fingers, curled by arthritis, moving slowly but surely, each tap of the key a defiant declaration. I may not have been able to hear properly, I may have struggled to get around without a cane, I may have needed reading glasses to decipher small print, but my mind was sharper than ever, a finely honed instrument, and there were people in this vast, complicated world who appreciated that, who valued me for it. The decision came not as a sudden, blinding insight, a dramatic epiphany, but as a quiet, inevitable realization, a slow, steady dawning. Much like an archaeologist painstakingly, patiently peels away layer after layer of earth, carefully removing centuries of accumulated dust and debris, to get to the profound truth hidden beneath the ground, I was slowly, deliberately freeing myself from the long-held, comforting illusions about my family, the carefully constructed facade. The incident at the pool, as cruel as it was merely the catalyst, the sharp, painful trigger for a process that began long, long ago, a quiet rebellion simmering beneath the surface. That morning, I woke with an extraordinary clarity of thought, a crystal-clear vision of my path forward. I will no longer spend the precious, dwindling years of my life trying to earn the respect, the validation of those who are fundamentally incapable of giving it. Robert, Carol, Charlotte, they will never see me for the vibrant, intelligent, accomplished person I am. To them, I'll always be a burden, an eccentric old woman to be tolerated, taken care of, and, ultimately, ignored, tucked away. I dialed Robert's number, my fingers surprisingly steady, determined not to delay the inevitable, to cut the cord cleanly. "Mom," he answered after the third ring, his voice laced with surprise, almost suspicion. I didn't usually call him, preferring to wait for his weekly, obligatory visits. "Is something wrong? Are you all right?" "Nothing urgent, Robert," I answered calmly, my voice steady, betraying no hint of the turmoil within. "I just wanted to let you know that I won't be able to make it to lunch next Sunday." "Why?" He sounded instantly annoyed, a familiar irritation creeping into his tone. "We had an agreement, Mom. We planned it." "I have other plans, Robert," I stated simply. "What other plans?" He didn't even try to hide his blatant disbelief. In his meticulously ordered world, a 69-year-old woman simply shouldn't, have plans other than family events, other than being available for them. "I'm starting work on cataloging my entire archaeological collection," I replied, allowing a hint of pride to color my voice. "It will take up all my time in the coming weeks, a significant undertaking." "Cataloging? You mean those old shards you keep in the basement?" He chuckled, a dismissive, derisive sound, his ignorance profound. I gripped the receiver tighter, holding back a sharp retort, a wave of familiar irritation. "They're not old shards, Robert. They're archaeological artifacts, many of which have significant scientific value, priceless historical importance." "And that's more important than Sunday dinner with your family?" he challenged, his voice incredulous. At the moment, "Yes, Robert," I affirmed, my voice unwavering. There was a long, stunned pause, filled with the static of his disbelief. I could almost picture his face, a mixture of anger, bewilderment, and a dawning, grudging understanding. "Is this about that nursing home talk?" he finally asked, his voice cautious, a rare moment of uncertainty. "If so, Mom, Carol and I were just suggesting an option, a possibility. No one's going to force you there, you know." "That's not the point, Robert," I said, my voice hardening. "I've just decided to focus on the work that has always inspired me, that has defined my life." "At your age?" The skepticism in his voice was almost palpable, a thick, insulting fog. My age has nothing to do with my knowledge and experience, Robert, I replied, a cold defiance in my tone. By the way, I recently received an invitation to give a lecture at the local museum. Turns out the director read my work back in college and found it quite compelling. The museum? That little local history museum downtown. Robert chuckled, a loud, dismissive bark. Surely they just couldn't afford a real expert, Mom. His words were meant to jab, to wound, but I found them sliding across the surface of my mind without penetrating deeper, without leaving a mark. Robert's opinion, his casual dismissal, no longer held the power, the importance I'd foolishly given it for so long. Maybe, I agreed neutrally, a small, knowing smile playing on my lips. In any case, I'll be quite busy for the next few weeks. Give my apologies to Carol. I hung up without waiting for his response, the click of the phone a small act of rebellion, a final cut. It was a small, decisive act of defiance, but it gave me a profound sense of freedom, a lightness I hadn't experienced in a very long time. The basement of my house, a sanctuary of knowledge and discovery, was my personal museum, my private realm. David, with his foresight and boundless enthusiasm, had insisted that when we bought the house in Gladstone, we choose one that had a dry, well-insulated basement specifically for our ever-growing collection, a treasure trove. Here, on meticulously organized shelves and in specially designed cabinets with shallow, labeled drawers, we kept the tangible evidence of my life's pursuit, the echoes of ancient civilizations, fragments of pottery, their surfaces telling stories. Small statuettes, their features worn smooth by time, intricate beads, arrowheads, gleaming coins, everything David and I had painstakingly collected over the years, each item a piece of a larger puzzle. Each artifact was carefully packaged, nestled in tissue paper, meticulously labeled with the precise place and date of its discovery, a historical passport. Descending the steep, wooden stairs to the basement, each step a groan of protesting wood, was a challenge, a small ordeal. But I made it, holding on tightly to the sturdy railing, my determination unwavering. When I turned on the single, bare light bulb, its yellow glow illuminating the quiet space, I froze for a moment, overwhelmed by a sudden, powerful wave of memories, a ghostly presence. Here, among these ancient, silent objects, I felt David's presence more strongly, more vividly, than anywhere else in the house. His spirit, his passion, lingered here. I walked over to the sturdy workbench we had set up against the far wall, its surface scarred by years of work. On it lay the field journals I'd brought down here a few days ago, their yellowed pages filled with my youthful script, planning to finally get started on the cataloging project. Next to it was a lamp with a built-in magnifying glass, an indispensable aid for eyes that were no longer as sharp as they used to be, a concession to time. The first thing I pulled out was the old, clunky laptop. David had insisted on buying it shortly before he died, his excitement contagious, convincing me, with his usual persuasive charm, that a digital catalog would be more durable, more accessible, than a paper one. I turned on the computer, its fan whirring to life, having some difficulty remembering the password, a small frustration, but I persevered. Creating a new file, I began methodically describing the first artifact, a small, exquisitely crafted clay figurine of a fertility goddess found in Anatolia in 1974, its ancient eyes seeming to watch me. The work was slow, painstaking. My fingers, twisted by arthritis, moved clumsily across the keyboard, each key a small effort. I often made typos, a source of mild annoyance, which I had to meticulously correct, but I took my time. I had all the time in the world, or at least all the time left in my life, and I would fill it with purpose. By the end of the day, I had only described a dozen items, a small dent in the vast collection, but I felt a profound, quiet satisfaction with the work I had done, a sense of accomplishment. This catalog, this painstaking record, would become my true legacy, a tangible way to preserve the vast knowledge, the deep insights I had accumulated over a long, dedicated life in archaeology. Maybe someday this collection, this testament to my passion, will end up in a Real museum, a place of honor, where new generations of students, their eyes alight with the same curiosity that once burned in mine, will be able to study these artifacts, to touch the past just as I once did. The days merged seamlessly into weeks, a continuous flow of purpose. I established a satisfying, unwavering routine for myself, working diligently on the catalog in the morning, my mind sharp and focused, writing a detailed, insightful response to Marcus in the afternoon, delving into complex theories, and immersing myself in the latest archaeological journals in the evening, devouring every new discovery, which I subscribed to despite their exorbitant cost, a necessary indulgence. I didn't leave the house except for my vital visits to Dr. Chen for my new hearing aid, a significant improvement, and weekly, strategic trips to the grocery store, a brief foray into the mundane world. Robert called twice, predictably. The first time was to let me know, with a hint of thinly veiled disapproval, that Charlotte had taken offense to my refusal to come to lunch, portraying me as the unreasonable one. The second was to remind me, with a patronizing tone, to pay the utility bill, as if I could possibly forget such mundane, essential things. Both conversations were short, formal, and utterly devoid of genuine warmth or connection. I didn't ask about his life, his work, his struggles. He wasn't interested in mine, not truly. A call from the director of the Gladstone Museum of Natural History came as a complete, delightful surprise, an unexpected gift. Dr. Margaret Phelps, an energetic woman in her mid-50s, her voice radiating enthusiasm, introduced herself and, without much preamble, got straight to the point, her words of validation. "Dr. Miller, we are truly honored to have you living in our town," she said, her voice sincere. "I read your work on Mesopotamian pottery in graduate school, many years ago. Your groundbreaking research on the influence of ancient trade routes on the spread of pottery techniques was, quite simply, revolutionary." I felt a warmth, a profound sense of validation, spill over my chest, an emotional balm. She was talking about a paper published 30 years ago, a piece of academic history, but discussing it as if it were a recent, cutting-edge work, its relevance undiminished. "That's very kind of you, Dr. Phelps," I replied, a small smile touching my lips. "Please call me Margaret," she interjected warmly, "and Dr. Miller, it's not a courtesy. It's an undeniable fact." "That's exactly why I'm calling. We're organizing a very special series of lectures on treasures of ancient civilizations specifically for our high school and college students. It would be absolutely wonderful if you, Dr. Miller, would agree to give a lecture on your monumental work in Mesopotamia." I was momentarily confused, a flicker of hesitation. It had been many, many years since I had given a public lecture, my voice echoing in vast lecture halls. Would I still be able to hold an audience's attention, to captivate young minds? Would my memory, a vast but sometimes capricious archive, fail me when I recounted the events of half a century ago? "I'm not sure," I started, my voice wavering slightly. "You'll have plenty of time to prepare, Dr. Miller," Margaret added quickly, sensing my hesitation, her voice reassuring. "The lecture is scheduled for the 15th of next month, a generous time frame, and we'll provide everything you need: a state-of-the-art slide projector, a crystal-clear microphone, help with the presentation, anything at all." The thought of diving back into the exhilarating world of academic archaeology, of sharing my hard-won knowledge with eager young minds, of seeing in their eyes the same fierce fire of inquiry that once burned so brightly in my own, was too tempting to resist. "I'll do it," I said, surprising even myself with the sudden, firm determination in my tone, a decision made. "Wonderful!" Margaret exclaimed, her voice bubbling with delight. "I'll email you all the details right away. You have email, don't you?" "Of course," I replied, slightly offended by the implicit suggestion that I might be so technologically backward, so out of touch. "I've been using email for 20 years, Margaret." Margaret laughed, a genuine, hearty sound. "I'm sorry, Dr. Miller, I didn't mean to offend you. It's just that some of my colleagues of your generation prefer traditional methods of communication, you know, pen and paper." We exchanged email addresses, a modern formality, and I hung up the phone, feeling energized, revitalized, a new sense of purpose bubbling within me. The upcoming lecture, A Return to My True Calling, gave me a new purpose, a fresh focus for my work. I immediately started going over possible topics and approaches in my mind, my thoughts racing. Should I talk about our groundbreaking findings at Tel Halafa, the royal tomb, or focus on the broader, more encompassing topic of Bronze Age trade routes and their profound impact? Immersed deeply in these exhilarating thoughts, I barely heard the doorbell ring, a distant, muffled chime. When I opened it, I found Liam on the doorstep, a worried crease between his brows. "Grandma," he smiled, but I could clearly see the worry, a faint shadow in his kind eyes. "Can I come in? I need to talk."